Welcome to this tutorial. In this video, we are going to build an application like Grammarly using ChatGPT. And we're going to use two components. First of all, for creating the front end, we are going to use the library called Streamlit. And once we have created this front end, we are going to connect it to our ChatGPT API. Once we have everything ready, we'll be able to perform three actions. First of all, we are going to be able to create summaries of text. So we have a very long text we don't want to read, we pass it to our application, and then we have a summary with the most important points of the text. Secondly, rewriting. We have a text we want to rewrite, maybe we want to change the tone or the intention of the text, maybe from a story we want to convince the person who's reading it, maybe we even want to convert a text into an email. So once we prepare all the configurations, we can write this text. And even we will be able to select and change the style, for example, making it as if it was written by Yoda, Steve Jobs, or Bukowski, for example. And once we have everything done, we send it to the request to the ChatGPT API, and then we have our text rewritten. And the last action, the third one, is going to be spell checking. We have some text with some errors. We pass the text to the API, and then we have the text corrected. We have our input text and the grammar errors over this text. And I think this tutorial is very useful because from one side, from the learning perspective, I think it's very interesting to use Streamlit with ChatGPT API, and we can build a very interesting application with both of them together. And secondly, because Spellcheck, summarizing, and rewriting, I found them very common in our day-to-day life. So we're going to be able to use this kind of application built by our own. So let's go coding. Before jumping straight to coding and going everywhere just writing lines of codes, it's important to know what we want to build or design. In our case, we are lucky because we already have the final result over here, and this is what we are going to analyze, and then we are going to start to code each of the components. So in our case, we have a very simple web app with a title. Here, we are going to have the place to put our OpenAI API Key. I already have mine, and then I will show you how you can get yours. We have the model, GPT 3.5 or 4, and the different actions, summarize, rewrite, or spell check. Let's try, for example, with summarize. I'm gonna copy here some text of example I have. And now we can see that the web app is running, and basically we are connecting to the OpenAI API, we're connecting with ChatGPT, and then it's gonna return us the summary of this text. And here we have the bullet points with the result. This is for summarize. Once we are gonna want to do rewrite, we have different options. We will be able to select the audience, general, knowledgeable, expert, formality, like this is the tone, informal, neutral, or formal. Also the domain, if it's kind of an email, just we want to be creative, or is business oriented, and also the intention. Is it just to inform, to tell a story? So as we can see here, the idea is to have different options so we can have some power about the rewriting of the text. And even here we have some let's say, open creativity, and we can ask to rewrite this text in the style of Steve Jobs, Yoda, or even Charles Bukowski. All right, once we already know what we want to build and we have this design, let's go to coding. So we are gonna come over here, create our first folder, source, and here we are going to need two files. We are going to first create the file app.python and utils. In this first file is where we are going to create, let's say, our front end, our web app, and the utils is where we are going to code the different functions we will be used to connect to the API of OpenAI. I'm gonna open both of them with Visual Studio Code. Okay. And before that, let's do one thing, which is installing the libraries. So in my case, I'm using Anaconda prompt. You can use Anaconda if you have this one installed, if not just the normal command line. We're gonna do pip install. We're gonna need two libraries. First one is pip install Streamlit. Because I have already installed this library, this is going to go very, very fast. In any case, I just want to do it so you can see how it is done. And the other library we'll be using is the one from OpenAI. And with this, we are good to go. Next thing is moving to this folder. Okay, so this folder is in desktop. In this case, what I'm gonna do, for example, come here and just copy this path. We go over here and we write cd, which comes from change directory, space, and then the folder we want to go. So now we are in this same page, in the same folder of the different files. Next, we are gonna run the web page. For that, we write Streamlit run space app.py. And here we have our web. Because we haven't done anything yet, it's just a blank space. Okay, so let me put this here and here there. Okay, let's start to create first this front end where we are gonna put the different buttons and where we want to have like this, model selection, and then we'll start coding the backend or the utils where we are gonna be connecting with the ChatGPT API. We are gonna import libraries, OpenAI, and let's start with the title. Again, because we already know what we want to build over here, it's very simple to just start to get inspiration from here. So here we have it, we update it, and here we have the title. Okay. Next thing we are gonna add is gonna be this section over here. So for that, it's gonna be very simple. Let's go over here. First, we are gonna do like this. And as we can see here, it's a text input of type password. The idea is here, once we write, we cannot see what is written except if we click here. This is why we are adding type password. And the title is OpenAI API Key, which comes from here. And then the value is stored in this variable. Okay, as we can see, one other thing is that this one is not taking the full size of the front end, but it's just taking part. For that, what we can do is the following. We are gonna create 3 columns, and here we have the size 1, 2, and 1. So basically what we are doing is like giving the weight of the different sizes. So in this case, total is 4, and that means that the second column is gonna have half of the size of the screen, and here we will have 1 quarter and here the other quarter. So that means that we are gonna create 3 columns where the first one we really don't care about it, and the last one we don't care either about it. So we are just gonna keep the second column, which is half of the page. We keep this column and we change from for this st. So now we run over here. And now we have a little bit more style, which stay a little bit more visually attractive. Then the second thing we're gonna do is adding this model and this action. Exactly the same, we are gonna create in this case 4 columns equal size. That's why here we have 4 outputs. The first one, we don't care. This is why we have this symbol. And the last one, again, we don't care. We just want to use the second and the third columns. And in the second column, we are going to use a select box or a drop-down menu. In this case, let me save. And here we have with the title model and 2 options, GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. That's what we have here in the second column. And then the third column, we have action. And the different selection we can pick here is summarize, rewrite, or spell check. And this is exactly what we have here. Perfect. So now what we are gonna do now is adding the section where the user is gonna input the text we want to rewrite, for example. Okay, let me take this one. So this text area is where the user is gonna put the text, and then we are gonna save it into input text. As we can see, by default, this text area is not very big. So let's change the size. That looks better. And the last part is the button. So basically the idea is once we have added our OpenAI API key, selected the model, the action, and input the text, then we will click run. Run now, if we click run, it doesn't happen anything. But what we are gonna do is, if someone click the button, then we are gonna have our magic function that will summarize, for example. We'll have the input text and the model, and then we'll have some magic. So this is what we are gonna start coding now. Let's leave this like this. And here we have everything we need so far. So because we are gonna start with summarize, so far we don't need to worry about the rest of the actions. Let's build this functionality, and now we are gonna create this part of connecting with the OpenAPI, and then sending our request with our instruction, our input text, and then process the response. For that, let's go to utils and start coding here. Import OpenAI, and first thing we need is our prompt. So for that, we are gonna create, let's say, the base template of our prompts. Here we're gonna add a prompt for each of the action we'll be creating. The first one is gonna be summarize. And as we can see, if we are summarizing, this is what we're gonna send to ChatGPT. You will be provided with the text delimited by triple quotes, which is here. And we want to summarize the text by extracting the most relevant information in the form of bullet points. This is what we have just done before in the demo. Okay, we have the prompts we want to fill with the input text. So let's create the function to define the prompt. We are gonna need the action, the input text, and what we are gonna do is prompt, empty prompt, if action equal to summarize, we're gonna do prompts to fill the first dictionary, and we will access the key summarize. And how do we fill this part with dot format? And what information do we want to put here? The input text. And then return. If the action is summarize, go to this list, access the first element, and access the key summarize and give me this information. With this information, I'm gonna put this input text in this space. So now we have already the prompt, and let's now do the model request. I'm gonna directly copy this one, and here we are using the OpenAI library. We are gonna do a chat completion. We are gonna use the model that the user is selecting on the front end, and then we are gonna pass two messages. And the difference is gonna be based on the role. The role means what kind of information we are gonna be sending to the API. We are gonna have two components. First of all is the system, and this system role is to give the ChatGPT some context about what we are gonna do. In our case, we are saying that you are an expert proofreader, the most advanced AI tool on the planet in the proofreading. So this is to give the context to the ChatGPT in order to prepare for the kind of task we are gonna ask. Now, the second role we are sharing or sending is the user. This means what is the user asking or writing. It's like when you go to ChatGPT webpage and there you add some text. This is as the user. And what are we sending in the content? The prompt we have just defined. So these simple functions, now we are gonna import them from utils, import model request, and define prompt. So if action is equal to summarize, define prompt with model and input text. And this prompt we will use then summarize text is equal to model request, and then we will send. No, I think this is not like this. Let me see. Action and input text. So this goes here. The prompt goes here. And then the action goes here. Perfect. And the last part will be just to mark down. We want to show the final result. Nice. So let's go to our web page and let's try to see how it goes. For that, we'll be using again an OpenAI API key. And the way to get this OpenAI API key is just go to OpenAI webpage. Under the developer section, you have the part of the OpenAI API keys. Just go there, create a new key, and then use it for this tutorial. I'm gonna be using mine over here, Turbo Summarize, and let's see if everything is fine with this example. Okay, no API key provided. So here we have said that we are saving or in a variable this OpenAI key, but we are not using it. For that, we use the OpenAI library API underscore key is equal to the key we are providing. And now if we execute again, looks better. Now it's running. And here we have the results. So we have already achieved our first task, which was the part of summarizing. That looks nice. Perfect. So then let's go to rewrite. As we saw in the first application, what we wanted is once we click on rewrite, we would like to be able to choose different options for this rewriting. Now we need to create this part over here. So let's go. So in this case, what I would like to do is if the action is equal to rewrite, I would like to show all of this. So just when the action is rewrite, I would like to show everything we have here. So give me a second and then I will be explaining all of this. So let's first check that everything is working fine. If the action is rewrite, we have all these options. Perfect. So once we click on the select box action and we pick rewrite, we are going to be showing all of this. And what are we creating here? Basically, we are again creating 4 columns. In this case, we are going to use all of them. So column 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in each of the columns, we are just going to add a select box or a drop-down menu. First one is audience. And as you can see, all of them, they have first select an option as a default. And then the different option we have. One for the audience, formality, domain, intent. And this one is a little bit different style. And it's going to be, again, a text input. And it's going to be taking all this part of the web. And with this, we already have the front end. Now we need to change this a little bit in order to take into account all this configuration the user have picked in order to write the text. So for that, we are going to do as following: elif action rewrite. We will create the dictionary we are going to call text goals, and basically it's going to create a dictionary with 5 keys: audience, formality, domain, intent, and style, and the values are going to be the ones selected by the user over here. And then we are going to use again exactly this same structure. We are going to define the prompt, but in this case, we are not just going to pass the input text, but the goals or how we would like to achieve our rewriting. And then with this prompt, we do the request, and instead of summary, we are And now we need to change a little bit this definition of function, because now we are not using these text goals. So first of all, we need to add text goals, and we're gonna use default values of false, because in other case, if we don't pass the text goals, the function is gonna keep working as expected. In any case, if we pass the text goal, we can use it. Elif action is equal to rewrite, then prompt is equal second element and rewrite. So let me, here we have the prompt. So it's basically the same structure. We define that we are gonna provide the text delimited by triple quotes over here, and we need to rewrite the text taking into account the following information. And here is where we are gonna add what the user have selected in the front page. But the problem is that we cannot just put like general, neutral, or academical words. You know, we need to at least structure a little bit and define even small sentences. So this is what we're gonna do now. And for that, I'm gonna need the following. So the idea is, if we have used the audience, if the user has selected audience, we are not just gonna put expert, expert or general. We are gonna write audience is expert. Again, even if it's a subtle change, it can be very useful for the model. For the formality, it's gonna be the same. Write the text in informal tone, or even the intent. The intent is to convince, tell a story, describe. And then at the end, we have the style. Writing the style of Steve Jobs or of Yoda, for example. So now we have this dictionary of text goals. We have simple words, and then we need to use this word to fill this part of the prompt. For that, we are going to use the following function, and basically it goes as follows. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So we are going to be iterating over this dictionary. Okay, we are going to be iterating over this dictionary we have created with the options. And if the key is equal to style, which means this one, and the value is different to none, then we are going to go to these goal prompts, look for the key style, and add the information the user has written here. So in the style of Yoda or Steve Jobs, or the one we would like. And then once we have this sentence, we are going to add in the prompt parameter. So this one is a little bit more special because the part of style is written in a different way. It's not a drop down, but it's a free input text. Then for the rest, if the value is different to select an option, which means the user have selected an option, because if not, we will have the default one, then we go to these goal prompts, and if, for example, it's intent, we use the key we are iterating over the dictionary, we select intent, and then the value is going to be the value the user has added. So here we are iterating over the dictionary, and at the same time the key and the value of this dictionary, because now we need the key to access again this one, and then the value to fill the blanket. And once we have filled everything, we append to this list. Once we have finished this part of passing simple words to a little bit more structured sentences, the next step is to check if the user have added something, because maybe the user just want to rewrite the text, but hasn't added any different options or this. So in this case, we still need to add something to the prompt. So we will say that we want the text to be easier to understand and avoid the repetitions of words and phrases. And if the user has selected some prompt parameters, and this is why it's different to 0, the length, then we will just join in a sentence and then pass the prompt config. And what are we going to do with this sentence we have created? Audience is formal, tone is formal, the intent is to describe. All this configuration, we are going to use it over here. So if we are going to rewrite, what we are going to use is this function and it's gonna return the prompt config. And what should we do with this prompt config? This is the part or the section we want to be reading here. So basically this prompt configuration, we are gonna say to ChatGPT, rewrite the text taking into account the following information. The tone is formal, the intent is to convince, and we want the text to be written in the style of Yoda. And then here we are gonna add the text. This is why prompt config goes first and input text goes second. So I think we have everything already done here. And let's see. Let's go directly to try. OpenAI API Key. And then here we have a text kind of love, okay? Let's see what's gonna be the output. Let's go for a neutral tone, domain creative. Let's tell a story. And as we have said many times, let's use, for example, Yoda. Let's see if everything works fine. It seems that it is working fine. Okay, yeah. Forgot to write the result on the screen. Written text, perfect. You click run again. So yeah, here we have this text rewritten like a story and with the style of Yoda, which is pretty fun. So here we have achieved the second task, which was the one of rewritten the text. So we already have done summarizing, we have achieved rewriting, and now we are gonna go to the last one, which is spellcheck. So spellcheck is gonna be quite similar to summarize. Is equal to spellcheck. Define prompt, perfect. Model prompt, summarize text. So here it's a little bit different because what we are gonna ask ChatGPT is to return the text corrected. So once we have the text corrected, we need to create a function to compare with the input text and to see the difference. Basically, you will have corrected text. And then we will need a magical function, which will be like compare text. And we will need input text and corrected text. And with this comparison to see the difference and the correction, we will need to style a little bit the text to make it easier for the user to see what's going on over here. So for that, I think it's a little bit easier if instead of just coding in the Visual Studio Code, I do it in the Google Colab. So in this case, I'm gonna share the link with you so you can use the same Colab and then you can follow with the explanation. The library we'll be using is divlib. And here we have the input text and the output text. There have been two corrections. The first one, design, we miss one letter, which is the D, and in the correction we have added this one. And then the last word, response, instead of a Z, we should write it with an S. So those are the two texts we need, the input and the output. This div library is the one is going to help us to compare both of the text and see what's the difference. The problem is that the result is going to give this library is not exactly the one we want. So then we will need to be working a little bit with Python to make it easily usable and visually visible for the web page. And here is the result. So ChatGPT is a large language model design, and here we see the first element. It's saying this word is no longer, we are no longer using this word, we are using this one. This is why we have a minus and a plus. And with this mark, it's saying that the difference is this new letter D. For the same here, it's saying, look, in this word, we no longer have this word, and the difference is the letter Z, that now we have an S. So that's perfect, but again, this is not what we would like to have, and this is what not we're gonna show a user because, I mean, it's like a little bit ugly to read. So first, what we want to do is remove these lines with the question mark. For that, we are just gonna iterate over the different elements of the div, which are these words, and if one of the words contains this question mark, then we are not going to add it to the list word. Basically here, it's a for loop in just one line, but if we want, we could write it like this. Okay, for word in div, if this element not in word, these 4 lines of codes is exactly the same we are doing over here. That's why sometimes we prefer to use this one line for loop because it's more visual. And as we can see here, now the question mark has disappeared because we are not appending it to our list. We are just appending the words that don't contain this question mark. And now what we can see here is that the word which was incorrect and the one corrected are next to each other. This is going to be very useful for what we are going to do now. First, I have created a correction style, which is a very simple function that given a word, given two words, one which is the input word and one is the correction, is going to create the following text. And what is all of this ugly thing? It's just HTML code, and the way to understand what we are doing is just clicking over here. I'm gonna copy this code. We go over here, we click run. And as you can see here, the sign, which is the corrected new word, is on green. And if we hover over the word, we can see the old and the mistaken word, which was designed without the D. So that's what we want to achieve, having the wrong word and the right word and connecting it in the same function so we can have exactly this result. And here we have this function. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to create one empty list, which is reviewed sentence, and then this correction word that for now is going to be false. Let's see what it is used for. First, we are going to do a for loop and we are going to go iterating over the list words, which are this one. And we use enumerate because we want to iterate using the index and the element of the list. So for example, here is going to be ChatGPT element 0, is element 1, A element 2, large element 3, and so on. So we are going to be having or receiving from the loop both things at the same time, the index and the element of the list. Once we are iterating over here, again, let's forget this part, okay? So if the word we are iterating contains the minus element and the next word, because we are accessing the list again and using the index we have +1, which means the next word. So if the word we are iterating is minus and the next one is plus, which means the correction, we are going to call this function we have just seen, and we are going to pass the wrong word and the corrected one. And this information I'm going to append in this review sentence, and then I'm going to make correction word true. So what is this correction word? Basically, if we continue iterating, we have just passed from the minus, we are just here, okay? So we have iterating over here and we have used this word and this other word to create the HTML styling. And next, if we keep continuing iterating, the next element we'll be iterating is this one. But this information we have already used in the previous step. So basically what we do here is, if we have already used the next word, we make correction word equal true. And basically, once we go again to the next word, if correction word is equal to true, which is what we are validating here, then we'll say that the correction word is false, with the idea that now, because we have already passed this if clause, now we are not going to be passing over here. So once we have used this one, it just passed to the next word. And this is the way we use in order to, let's say, we don't want to be working with the next word because it's already used here. Finally, if the word is not any of those and is not a correction word, then we just append the text. And here is the output. We just do like this and we join all the result. And what we will have is the following. Here we have the full sentence corrected. ChatGPT is a large language model. with the new word, and if we hover, we have the previous corrected word. And the same over here. So this function is a little bit more complicated. I hope I was being able to explain it in a nice way. So again, if you have any doubt, don't hesitate to write on the comments. But I hope more or less with this Google Colab, it's a little bit easier to understand. So we just gonna copy this function, which is basically just using all of this. We go over here in the utils. We are gonna need to copy one last thing, which is this function. And we need to import this library. And I think we are ready to go. Just we need to add this new prompt for spell checking, which is over here, spell check. The same, you will be provided with text delimited by triple quotes. And here what we are doing is adding conditions. If the text contains spell or grammar errors, provide the text corrected. So we are asking ChatGPT, validate first if there are errors, and if there are, do this action. If the text does not contain errors, return back the text delimited by triple quotes. The idea of this instruction is, okay, we are gonna send you some text, and if there are some errors, give us the correction, but if there are not, give in any case the input text, so we have always the same expected output. Because sometimes, let's say it's gonna answer no errors found, or it's gonna return anything, and this is from the developer point of view not very useful, because I mean we cannot be creating a code for each of these different situations. So what we are asking here is very specific condition, and based on the value of the condition, very specific actions. In this way, as a developer, we are more chill in the results we are gonna be receiving. Next step in the define prompt, leave summarize no is gonna be spell check. Here spell check, here second. Okay, I think we are ready to go. And let's try. What was the sentence? Compare text. Yeah. The function we need to import now over here is the one of compare text. And now this style text is going to be written in the ST Markdown. And one important thing we need to add in order to make it visually visible, the HTML, is the following. We are going to allow to read the HTML. So the idea is once we pass this information in the Markdown in the front, we want to render this HTML so we can see as we have seen before in the example. Okay, we have everything prepared over here. Let's go over here. Let's click spell check, and we're gonna use the same sentence as in the example. We click run, and there we go. ChatGPT is a large language model designed where the previous word was without the D to generate human-like responses. And again, the correction. So the idea here is we have a very long text. We don't know what we are correcting or if there was any change. Thanks to this function we have just done, we can see which part by highlighting the word has been corrected, and even we can compare with the previous text. And next time what we will do is just copy and paste, and here we will have the correction perfectly done. And now let's see with an example where there are no spell check mistakes. So here ChatGPT has done what we asked to do, which was basically, if there are no spell check errors, give me back the input text. And in this way I can show some result and without any green or anything, any correction, because the text was well written. And here we have just finished this spell check section. With that we have done the summarize, where we are gonna get some, some bullet points of this information. Then we are gonna have the rewrite, picking different options, select an option, audience, formality, domain, or intent, and even giving some style, which could be Yoda, Steve Jobs, I don't know, Elon Musk, Mark Twain, whatever you would like to create. And finally, we have created this spell check, and we have spent a little bit more of time in order to make it visually understandable for the user which parts of the text has been corrected or well were written. It was a pretty interesting tutorial. Remember that we are learning, so if you didn't catch something at the first, it makes completely sense, because that's the point of some tutorial, to learn something new that we are not used to do. In any case, if there's any doubt, just go some seconds back and then try to see what was wrong or what you didn't get. If still there is some doubt because I didn't really manage to explain it, just write on the comments and we'll see this doubt. In this tutorial, we see the power of combining Streamlit with ChatGPT to build so cool applications like this one, like a Grammarly, where we are able to summarize, rewrite, or spell check our text. In the next video, we'll be combining this ChatGPT with our PDF. And let's say we have a PDF of 100 pages, and we'd like to ask some questions about this document. We will combine this ChatGPT with this PDF, and we will ask the questions about the document. But this will be in the next tutorial. I hope you learned something new and you had some fun. See you in the next one.